And here we are. Welcome to another surround event by Southwest Shakespeare Company, a founding resident company of Mesa Arts Center in beautiful Mesa, Arizona. I'm Mary Way, Executive Director, and here with me is Deborah Ann Bird, Artistic Director. Say hello to the people, Deborah.
Hello, people.
Today, our discussion is about the Southwest Shakespeare Company production of Farinelli and the King, written by Claire Van Kempen, directed by Carmen Jacobi. We have some of the cast members and creatives with us here today, and I'm delighted to introduce you to our director, Carmen Jacobi, StreamYarding into you from Wales. Hello, Carmen.
Carmen needs to unmute.
And we're going to have to get practice. We have Maestro. Are you here? Say hello. Yes.
No, yeah, I'm here.
Sergio Freeman Osuna. We have Farinelli himself, Miles David Romney. We have hello, Miles. We have the King, Ben Heckman.
Oh.
Bo Heckman.
Oh, yes. Ben and a bow, and we can bend our bow anytime you like. And his queen, Melody Knudsen.
Hello.
Good to see you. All right. So today we get to talk about Farinelli. We've had requests from, did we get Ben Tyler?
Ben Tyler.
I think you mean Bo Tyler.
Bo Tyler, yes.
Hi, you're Bo Tyler. Ben Tyler, who plays John.
Hi.
There we go. Being nearsighted does not help on these little Zooms. We're delighted to have you all today. Welcome and congratulations on a wonderful performance. We're very blessed to have two outstanding reviews come in this morning. One from Carrie Lingle and one from Gil Benbrook. Please see Broadway World and Phoenix Stages if you'd like to find out more. And of course, as ever, if you'd like to find out more, go to our website at swshakespeare.org. That's swshakespeare.org. And find out more about all of the productions that are going on right now. We're running in rep with The Tempest and have many more exciting events coming up for the rest of this season. So here we are to talk about Farinelli and the King. And I think the best place to start is with our director, Carmen Jacobi. Carmen is a director of opera, and she lives in Wales, though she is on the move all the time, came directly to us from Melbourne, where she was working with the opera there. Carmen, welcome, and whatever time it's in Wales, good morning, good afternoon, good night.
It's evening, actually. Thank you very much, Mary, for your lovely introduction. It's an honor to be here. I'm absolutely thrilled. And I guess you'd like to know how I approached this when you actually offered me the play to do. I was really thrilled to hear that. And there were so many strands I had to consider with my research. The historical characters, all of the characters in the play are historical. And the illness of the king, considered mad, and so in order to check out what was wrong with him, I actually booked a session with a psychiatrist, and he very kindly actually read the play first before I came to see him. And so I came armed with a lot of questions, and he answered them all. And the answer mainly is that all the symptoms as displayed in the script are consistent with bipolar. So that was a good starting point for Bo and me to start exploring this. The other thing I was, of course, interested in was the development between the King and Farinelli and what drew them together, and the shared childhood trauma. So obviously I did a lot of research about castrati and had discussions with Miles about the character of Farinelli. That's the other side. And then latterly, when Melody joined the company, we had very good conversations about her character And later on, I would like to invite Melody to talk about the trajectory of wife to carer, caregiver to victim, and how she comes out in all of this, because that is actually not talked about or hasn't been talked about up to yet. And it's I think her part of the story is worth to be heard. I obviously did research on John Rich, the theater impresario, and what made him tick, coming from a family of theater founders. His father founded the Lincoln's Inn Field Theater. He himself founded the Covent Garden Theater, and what his situation was. So we talked a lot about that. So that's about the actual characters. And the other side, of course, it was clear to me that we had to have that we wanted to have live music, and I'm delighted to have had Maestro Sergio Freeman Osuna on board for this. And so we talked a lot about the music making, and I'm sure Maestro will talk about this himself later. And then very quickly, I wanted to say how I approached staging this. It started off with a challenge presented to me by Mary. What am I going to do about the stage effect of the end of Act 1? Because in the Globe Theatre, Farinelli, the singer, was flown in. And of course, we can't fly in people in the Mesa Arts Center. So I mulled a lot over what we can do with that. And so we came to an effect which I'm not going to talk about, because for those people who haven't actually seen the show yet, I would like it to be a surprise. I approached the staging of this from the point of view of the journey that we as an audience take from the Royal Palace Madrid to backstage of a London theatre in the middle of an opera, to back to the Royal Palace Madrid, then into the middle of a Spanish forest, then we go again back to London to Covent Garden, and this time we're not backstage but on stage, and on stage in an opera with a Baroque opera set. So the visuals of all this, I took my starting point from the painting of the King Philip on horseback, and then looked at paintings of the period. The other important thing is the severe psychotic episodes that the king goes through. I tried to find a visual equivalent, and for me it was clear it was the Goya birds. There's a wonderful picture by Goya, Spanish artist, which is called The Sleep of Reason Produces Monsters. And it's a very impressive picture, and we used details of that for the projections. So whenever the king has got a moment in which we as the audience enter inside his head, time stands still, and we experience his existential angst, and it's shown. It's presented as the Goya birds haunting him, and also it's accompanied by a strange sound. So these were a few pointers of the research I've done and how I approached the production. But I'd like everybody else to talk about their experiences, please.
As important as anything else, I think our viewers would be very interested to know that this is basically a true story. Of course, we can't know the exact dialogue that goes on between husband and wife or friends with no witnesses, but there were always witnesses, because a monarch is never alone. So there are very interesting historical points that are brought up in this play that are not unrelated to contemporary problems. Mental health is an issue. The healing power of music is an issue. Fame is an issue. Castration was an issue. We hope that has been resolved since then. But I I'd really like to know what some of you did in terms of researching your very real characters in history and how much they pertain to the way you characterized your role on stage. Farinelli was the rock star of his time. Absolute, Carmen likes to say the Michael Jackson of the 1700s. It's very easy to find information about him. He was sort of a matinee idol. And there are paintings of Farinelli and also some pretty explicit details of the medical trauma that is caused by this barbaric procedure done to a 10-year-old boy. Miles, you were wrestling with all of these and also trying to hit the high notes. Tell us about.
Yes, it is certainly difficult to be asked to impersonate the man who is widely considered to be the greatest singer in the history of opera. Particularly when I have, I suppose, the handicap of intact anatomy. Being a countertenor, the castrati have always been a particular interest to me. When countertenors actually back during the period of Henry Purcell in England, they were on the scene until the importing of the Italian castrati who could outsing them. Then at that point, countertenors started where they could to try to impersonate the castrati, but really couldn't keep up. And so the foreign invasion, it was sometimes called, of Handel into England, and the Italian castrati pushed English singing and English singers off the stage for a time, and that's treated in the play. John Rich, in a kind of comedic, remembered dialogue between himself and his wife, talk about how unnatural the Italian singers are, but how extraordinary they were in that unnatural state. Farinelli, very likely similar to many, even most of the castrati at the time, underwent the medical procedure without any particular understanding himself of what it entailed or what it would mean to his life, or maybe even any assent. 10-year-old boy isn't really in the position to be looking at the future of his life and to be making those kinds of decisions. So usually it was thrust on these kids. And then they found themselves in the position of having been kind of used and abused, and also being thrust into the spotlight of fame and fortune and adulation. In the case of Farinelli, this plays very strongly into historically what we know of him and his psyche, and it plays into the script of Farinelli and the King. He almost certainly was a big reason why he decided to leave the London stage, where he was a celebrity, and essentially retire to the Spanish court to sing for an audience of one. He was looking for an escape from that public persona and the life that had been thrust on him, and for some kind of meaning that he could uniquely bring to the world, which he found when he sang for the King. So what this piece does beautifully is it encapsulates some of the most difficult character traits of two really significant historical figures, Farinelli and King Philip of Spain, and shows both the ups and the downs, and then how the personalities interacted with one another and the impact that each had on the other. Farinelli came to the Spanish court in order to heal the King, but a central message of this play is that Farinelli himself was healed by his association with King Philip and Queen Isabella, so it is very much a story of people finding strength and solace in one another.
Thank you.
Yes, since Queen Isabella is recently mentioned, Melody, what was it like jockeying between these two very strong and somewhat traumatized, but highly intelligent men?
You know, I'm in grad school right now getting my master's degree in counseling. So this play was particularly interesting to me from a lot of angles, from the aspect of untreated bipolar disorder and from the perspective of women's roles historically and from the perspective of the trauma that Farinelli has experienced. It was really interesting, I found. And I think as I've gone through this process of kind of getting to understand Isabella's arch, I think even though the play is set hundreds of years ago, the things that she's experiencing are so relatable. You know, in her role as a full-time carer for someone that she loves, and she knows what Philippe is capable of. She knows the level of intelligence and leadership and passion that he has the capacity to bring to his role, but she's also the one that witnesses more closely than anyone else the impact of this mental health issue on his life and on their relationship and on his role as the king. And I found it really interesting to see her arch as starting out as a young bride and passionately in love with this man, and then seeing his decline. And then by the end of Act 2, just seeing like the level of exhaustion that she's at. And the thing that I found the most interesting with that was everyone in this play keeps talking about Philippe being recovered. And as an actress, I don't see him being recovered. He's not recovered. He's just like hypomanic. He's not as crazy, but everyone keeps referring to him as recovered. And I feel like there's a sense of exhaustion that Isabella hits at the end there. Everyone's talking like he's fine and he's ready to go back, and he's still being abusive to her, and he's still being unmanageable and unpredictable, and she's at her wit's end with this. Everyone acting like Farinelli's voice has healed him, and that's really not the case. And so I feel like as an actor, I get frustrated with that, and I've been able to let that come through, I think, in Isabella as well, of being sort of exhausted and at the end of her rope. There's not much more she can do here. Philippe he recovers to the best point that they can get him, and he has to return to his role in Spain. He's still abusive. He's still unmanageable. And she makes a comment about him being, about knowing who he was when he was ill. And then as he is recovered, she's lost her own sense of identity, because she has spent so many years invested as his caretaker. And now that we're all pretending he's fine, she doesn't know what her role is in the relationship anymore, her own identity. And then I find it really interesting that she creates this deep connection with Farinelli. And I think some of that is sort of a shared understanding of what it is to be a sort of a pawn for other people. Of, you know, has expectations that she must fulfill for everyone else, and obligations for other people that she has to fulfill, and nothing is her own self-interest is never on the table. And I think in Act 2, we really see her connecting with that with Farinelli, because he shares this experience of becoming a famous opera singer, and we all celebrate him as that. But when he shares his story, we hear that this was all out of obligation to other people. None of this brought him joy. None of this was of his own volition. It was done to him. And I think there's something that they share in that connection of this obligation to other people.
So let me ask you this question. While the king may not be healed, is the queen healed by the music?
I think it's a respite for her, just like it is for Philippe, but in sort of a different way. Where with Philippe, it connects him to his lucid mind. For Isabella, I think it's just an escape for her. It's a place where she doesn't have to manage, and she can just kind of rest in enjoying the voice and the music. That's her these tiny moments of escape from all of the chaos that she has to manage.
And a friend and confidant, perhaps, just to have someone else in the mix with her.
Yeah, someone that's not politically minded, because everyone else that she interacts with, you know, we really only see her interaction with La Quadra, but really everyone else she's interacting with is politically minded, and she's having to keep on a brave face for everyone. But Farinelli also knows the interpersonal way that this mental health issue is affecting all of them. So I think she also shares that with him. Like he's the only one that really understands that.
So we're giving the impression perhaps that this is unhappy tale about depression. It's actually a very joyous piece, and we'll get to John Rich and the part the music plays in that. But in this healing triangle, we really must hear from the king. So the very real character of King Philip V of Spain. Bo, how does the king feel in all of this? What's going on in the king's head? That's a pub down the street. The king.
Well, there are different perspectives going on. The king, myself, I believe that I am in a dreamlike state, and that they're not aware, anyone that I encountered is not aware that they are in my dream, which of course is not the actual reality. They are in the real world, and I have lost my ability to differentiate a dream state from the real world. Moments of lucidity do present themselves, but for the most part, he's having a dissociative kind of an episode almost all the time, especially under high stress. If anyone puts stress on him, I really start having side fears and side phobias that only manifest themselves during high stress.
There are these magical moments where we see the king's true nature without this imposed, affliction on him.
Mm-hmm.
I believe the queen sees that. I believe Farinelli sees that. Are you a good person at heart? And what did you do for the taxes?
I think I'm a very noble person, especially in his youth. King Philip, I fought alongside my men in battle. I was a very good leader and a very efficient administrator. I reformed the entire tax system of Spain. I survived my own levels of abuse growing up from my father for certain reasons that you can find out in the play. So there's a hook. You have to come and see the show. And so there's a lot going on in his brain. He was at a very young age arranged by his grandfather, made King of Spain, and he is French. And Isabella is actually Italian. So yeah, do the math. strange sort of arrangement.
Well,
he is a good person, I believe, and this he feels he's in denial, but he does feel that something is happening. He does have moments of lucidity where he does sense that he's being drawn into a darkness. Something's happening, and that good person is being drained away.
And I think our director mentioned that in actual fact, he dealt with his bipolarity. He self-medicated by waging war.
Yep,
It-
that's right. Yes, because
yeah.
the war took you out of your depression because you could activate you, and you do the that right.
Oh, Carmen, I'm terribly sorry to say that the connection to Wales is failing at the moment. Let's see if it
Oh,
rejuvenates. Oh, hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Ah, better.
Yes.
Oh, mhm. Great. Yes, so I was saying he was riding into battle ahead of his troops very courageously, and it really took him out of his depression. So whenever there was war, he was not depressed. It took him right out of this. I wanted to also add another little aspect to the Queen, and the relationship with Farinelli. One thing that must not be underestimated is the sensuality of the music and of the human voice, and that really swept her off her feet. So that is another aspect, is the sensuality, which made her fall in love.
Spoiler alert. I think we should talk about that. We need to cycle back to that, but let's also hear from Ben Tyler, who plays John Rich, and of course our maestro, because some of the greatest uplifting moments on the stage are happening because of our comic relief and because of the beautiful, beautiful music, not to exclude Miles from that, who has an absolutely stunning voice. But Maestro, I'd like to say that our maestro and the musicians are all on stage for the entirety of the show, and they are costumed up and dressed out, and they actually play character pieces as well. What are you thinking when you're out there, and what are your observations about preparation for this and the existential moment of the musician being a character in the play?
Well, it was wonderful. I mean, it is certainly the first time I've ever had to do something like this. Being a conductor, you're used to being in the pit. So, like, probably nobody sees you in the first place. You're never on stage. There are a lot of difficulties that we had to overcome just because of the fact that we are on stage and Miles is singing with us. But I have to say we managed to do it, and it's coming out very beautifully. And of course, I would like to talk about the music in this play. It's all Baroque music, and when talking to Carmen, we always try to be historically informed in the way of we included a little bit more music than what was originally used in this play. So we always went for original music by French composers, or Handel or Lully, the most famous French composer. He was actually the composer that created the overture. Lully was the first composer in create an overture, and all of this is very important because Baroque music and the Baroque aesthetic in general brought basically opera with it. Opera came to existence during this period, and it was something unique. I mean, it's something that that involves drama and the power of the voice, and that's something that I also wanted to talk about. The power of the voice, the human voice. It's something just that we cannot even explain, I think. And we are lucky to have Miles with us because originally, as probably most of you know, this character of Farinelli was originally done by two people, one singing and one acting. And we were lucky to have Miles with us, with such a beautiful voice and also such a good actor, which is, by the way, not easy to find even in the opera world. Very often in the opera companies, they have to compromise between either they want a good singer or they want a good actor. and yeah, so
Park.
what?
We affectionately call that park and bark.
Yes.
Don't ask the singer to move.
Yeah, exactly. And well, that was in the past actually, like I don't know, like the 60s, 70s, 80s. Like the choice of the singers would be mainly because how they would sing, and they wouldn't even care. And Carmen probably can tell us about that. They wouldn't even maybe care a lot about how they would act, but they would be amazing singers. And nowadays is kind of the opposite. They actually the kind of the opera world, of the drama world. Um, Now it's actually more important that they are able to convey this drama to the audience. And of course, they have to be good singers. That's a given. But it's sort of like okay, they'll probably take a better actor than a better singer. But
Yeah.
so this music is very powerful. This music is very powerful, and I think that's because we all, talking about the voice, we can all relate to that. We all of the human beings, we all have this beautiful instrument with us, whether we use it or not. But most of us use it, even if it is not for professional purposes, right? But so I think this is something that that's why what makes opera and what makes singing so powerful. We can relate to, all human beings can relate to singing, and it is natural part of us. And for some way, I think that when we sing, there's something within us that comes out. There's our soul, our very own personality, our own, I don't know how to call it, but everything shows when one sings. And so I think that's why this place is very powerful, and I'm very happy to be in this play and working with all of these amazing actors and director and singers.
And well, you're very kind, Maestro. I'll also mention that in addition to leading the ensemble from stage and playing a character, the Maestro is also conducting from the harpsichord. He's, as is often the case with Baroque pieces, he's conducting from the harpsichord, playing the harpsichord, and has done a masterful job. We were fortunate to find someone who can do that. Certainly not all conductors can do that, and not all conductors are familiar with Baroque music to the extent that Maestro Sergio is. So Southwest Shakespeare was very fortunate to have access to the Maestro as well.
I second that emotion. And while cyberspace booted us off for a minute there, I wonder if we've had a chance to talk to John Rich about being a producer on stage. Is the character I most relate with is John Rich. He is
I'm glad that was the first thing you mentioned.
Human situations, mental health, how to deal with the world as it's presented to us. Most of us do not know what it's like to be a megastar or royalty, and the character that draws the audience's focus as the human on stage, the one who has a job and is trying to make a living and all of that, is John Rich. And Ben Tyler does a wonderful job of making us laugh and laugh at ourselves and pull the whole thing together in a scope that appears real.
It underlines to me that no matter how great a designer that you have, or how great of musicians you have, or how great of actors and singers that you possess, If you don't have a producer, nothing happens. That is really square one. You know, those guys are not going to go out and build a theater. That's not their job. But the idea of making a living at art, I think probably in the 1700s, was still kind of an odd notion. But that's what he does. And yeah, it was interesting for me to, I love history, and it was interesting for me to read about John Rich and what he went through. You know, in some ways, it reminds me of a film that I saw a long time ago that was about Gilbert and Sullivan. It was called Topsy Turvy, and it gave you a really good look backstage as to what it took to produce a piece of theater in that time. Now, obviously, Gilbert and Sullivan were much later, but getting with John Rich, getting to look backstage and see the machinations and how it's different and how things have changed up and how things are exactly the same. With getting a piece of art on stage, a piece of performance art, the things that the audience would never think about, and his opinions of some of the other artists of his day, he doesn't hold back. He has pretty strong opinions about other singers. So anyway, yeah, and that, you know, that is. I feel like John Rich's role in this piece is to give the audience a chance to breathe, because the tension is rather high at times with the king and the queen and Farinelli, and so when Rich rolls on stage, I think it just gives everybody a chance to exhale. And you know, it's kind of interesting too. I have two scenes with the queen. One is where she discovers Farinelli, and the other one is when she gives him back to me, or at least tries to. And I remember in talking to Carmen, you know, you had mentioned earlier she was comparing Farinelli to Michael Jackson. I said Elvis Presley, which would make John Rich Colonel Tom Parker. The producer, who hopefully didn't get 50% of Farinelli's earnings as Colonel Tom Parker did with Elvis, but it is. There is a similarity there. But, you know, you have to have somebody like that. You have to have somebody who's willing to take on the nuts and bolts of building a theater, promoting it, getting audiences in. If you don't have that, really, you don't. Nothing else will happen. It's the foundation, I think, of all of that.
I just felt a knot in my stomach when you said that. Deborah Ann, who has been a producer for years and years, did you relate with John?
I've produced. I know what it's like. Yeah, they're the unsung hero, really, of the art world, I think.
Actually, there would be no Farinelli, or at least we wouldn't know about Farinelli if there were no producers. Right. Why did you choose?
The other thing.
Oh.
May I add one other thing? That John Rich is incredibly passionate about theatre and about the new theatre that he has just built. And also, he is actually a fellow performer. He actually instigated and invented the part of Harlequin, a dancing Harlequin, and he was very, very famous for that.
So, for theater geeks, we can expound on Harlequin, because this is actually something that came from Commedia dell'arte, which was originally Italian and came through France, across the continent, and eventually to England. It's the basis of Panto, which is performed seasonally in the UK and still alive and well 600 years later, I mean, since the development of Commedia in the UK. Did you have a sense of that, Ben, as you were performing?
Yes, and it wasn't just the commedia. It was also the notion of a performer working in silence, which, I mean, was kind of bringing mime from France and to England for the first time. And so, yeah, I mean, he was a very innovative guy. And so he started out as a performer. So he had a performer's heart. But it was later that he got into being a producer, an impresario, if you will. to use I think that's probably a better term for opera, but he definitely understood what it was to like to be a performer. I think that I think that's something that should be in a director's toolbox, is to have at least experienced a few times what it is like to perform in front of an audience. It gives you a much better insight to what's going on with an actor when they're developing a piece or when they're performing for an audience.
Like standing naked in front of a firing squad. Yes, it's important. Are you jealous? Is John Rich jealous, Farinelli?
And
Oh, I'm sorry, what was that?
there was one other aspect. Sorry.
Oh yeah, the jealousy. What is he just teasing about being jealous? But all the flowers come in for Farinelli, and John Rich is out there doing his jig.
He's not easy. That's sincere.
Yeah.
Yes.
One other aspect of John Rich, which has gone right into the 20th century, because he actually produced the Beggar's Opera, John Gay's The Beggar's Opera, and that was revived by Bertolt Brecht as the Threepenny Opera. So his influence has gone right into the 20th century.
Yay for John Rich.
Yeah,
Not
that's pretty amazing. There are a couple of, I think there are a couple of places in the script where the playwright has inserted some a tip of the cap, I think, to some of those things. The Threepenny Opera, even I don't know. This is just my own theory, but I think there's even an Ionesco reference at one point. There are kind of very subtle things, and if you're into that sort of thing, I think you would pick up those references.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's not
Rick the Knife is, of course, Mac the Knife.
Yes.
So I do want to talk about love and politics as a part of this discussion as well. Tell me how you feel, but my observation is that when the triad, the king and queen and Farinelli, are getting along best, they are recouping something of their childhood or part of their development that they missed. And I'd love to know the actors' take on whether that's a bonding experience for them or not. And I'm going to ask the second question first, so you can sort of just all in one bundle, so you can freestyle and answer whatever you like. But Bo started to bring to light the political complex situation that they were in. The king is actually French. The queen is actually Italian. Royalty is only allowed to marry other royalty, their distant cousins, whatever, to keep a sort of royal bloodline. So nobody leading Spain is actually Spanish. And the king, in reality, King Philip V, had a whole posse of French people with him. And the queen actually had a whole posse of Italians. And in court, they would clash. So if there was a weakness portrayed in the queen, or in the king, if it became visible at all, the queen was played upon by her courtiers, saying, now is the moment we seize control. Now is the moment that Italy takes over Spain. So with great respect to Claire Van Kampen, Carmen has added this dumb show, this sort of mask at the beginning of the play to indicate that the king and queen are an absolute love match. It was a political union, but it was not necessarily a political union. They absolutely loved each other. Can you all tell what happened then?
I think it was lucky for them that they happened to like each other. Like you said, it was arranged. I don't think anyone had any say in the matter, but they happened to like each other. And from what I understand, had a really great bond and a really great connection, and like a lot of romance and intimacy, and like a pretty great sexual connection. And they really connected well, until Philippe started to decline. And that's at some point, that connection breaks down. I think Isabella really tries to hold on to that for as long as she can. And I think we see that throughout the show, that she keeps trying to remain connected to him for as long as she can, until it's just that intimate level of connection is no longer present. But I think they just kind of got lucky that they got matched together and liked each other.
I think that, thinking about love, that it was beautiful to see that you love him enough to seek whatever care is necessary. If regular medicine is not helping, which you see, if the psychiatrist that they have coming in helping is not necessarily helping, the fact that you saw and found Farinelli to bring to your husband because you love him, you want him to be okay, that is a sort of a beautiful love that I see in the play when I watch. You loved what you heard. You know how Farinelli's voice, how it came over, not just you, but it enveloped the entire crowd. You thought that if your husband could have this thing, perhaps it is something to bring him back to, not only to himself, but bring him back to you. I thought that was a really beautiful thing to see when I watched Farinelli.
I think in the beginning, in Act 1, we see a lot of that with her, of she's just trying to provide some relief for him. Like, outside of his political obligations, she's just trying to get him some relief from himself, like from his own mind.
Absolutely. I love watching you be a protector over him. And to me, that is love. I mean, having to take care of someone who is special needs, if you will, is a total selfless act of love happening all the time. And you do get exhausted, but it is something that, watching from an audience space and being someone who understands what it means to take care of special needs people, you did a good thing when you were trying to help bring him some kind of relief through music and song. It was beautiful.
Thank you.
That was very important to me, to work on that, which is why I included this prequel with the Baroque Dance. And it was wonderful to have Maestro's help with that, in that he chose the appropriate music, because it's music that Philippe would have grown up with at the court of the Sun King. And so that's why we had this love story developing through the wedding dance. And the other very important, there's a very, very brief moment, which I call the Romeo and Juliet moment, when the king wakes up having first heard Farinelli, and he tells the queen how much he loves her. And it's only a very, very brief moment before his voices and his psychosis is coming back. But it was very important to me to show that they were once happy together, which is why I added this prequel. I have no idea whether Claire von Kampen would be happy with that, but anyway, that's what I
If you're
did.
watching, I love you. Your work is phenomenal. Come see Farinelli and the King. So, Bo, do you feel like the king escapes to childhood when he goes into, I mean, is that part of how he tries to self-medicate? And Farinelli can jump in on this too. For instance, the move to the woods and doing simple things like gardening, recreate something from your youth. You're talking about being in the formal gardens of Versailles, which is not at all like digging in the dirt in the woods. But what What do you think the king is thinking?
I think you've hit upon exactly the issue there. His trauma, his family abuse from his father, and just the stresses of everything that he was going up. It is talked about. I speak about it in Act Two. I address these random people that appear out of the forest, and so I'm speaking to them, and I relate the story. I won't go to every detail, but he talks about his longing for freedom, to break free of the restrictions, and do what boys do, what anyone. I'm not restricted to boys. Do what anyone would want to do when they're young, if they were under such a microscope and had lessons physically beat into you. I think that has an impact later in his life. He flashes back constantly to that moment. He talks about it. A memory that has been returned to him is one of the things he said. So I think he's sort of been his own doctor at this point, and has had a major revelation earlier that day or something, since he's been there. And when he has these moments, they are very childlike. They flash back. His behavior, his everything about it is trying to recapture a youth, I think, that was taken from him, that he never ever had a chance of living. And
So not recapture
yeah,
a youth that he had, but maybe
Yeah.
create the youth he didn't have.
exactly.
Absolutely. And it's beautiful that there's something freeing about just not the confines of the walls of the palace, just to be out in the open, in the free air, in the forest, being able to look up at the stars at any time, being able to freely hear the birds sing, and
Freedom.
you know, and be in touch with the. It's really lovely to watch you speak about your love for even the fruit, and if you pluck it too soon, the garden, and you're still in charge of something. You may not be in the palace. It's just beautiful to see you.
But
I laugh every
yeah,
time I see you talking about the peppers that your wife has in the basket. It's just really beautiful.
Did you take those too soon? Here's a question from Margaret in Burbank. Do you identify with Queen Elizabeth II at all? Do you have a new perspective on what it's like to be monarch?
do I? Oh, well, of course. The burdens, and especially from, I love the crown, and that's just that's a favorite. And you really do get to see that these were, at the heart, really basic people. I mean, they wouldn't be like this if these restraints and these personas, and you can see it happening to Elizabeth, that you have these, I don't know what to say, it's traditionalists surrounding her to shape her into this monarch, and she had to make these very difficult choices of Elizabeth the person and Elizabeth the queen. And so you start to see who was speaking. Who did I cut you off?
No, it's just feedback.
Oh, okay. I'm talking over myself. But you saw this divide start to happen, and some difficult choices when she had this feeling in her heart, but she knew that she had to make the decisions of a queen. And so very hard, very difficult to do that.
It really is a story of repression, subliminating some basic human reactions to things in order to speak for the state. And all of you do it. John Rich is the only person in the play who we identify with because he is somewhat unbridled. He's free. He's not free from the constraints of having to run a successful business. None of us are. We all have rent.
Yeah.
But he is speak his mind even when he's face to face with the Queen of Spain.
In a significant way, this play is about the constraints of celebrity and genius. that all of the king and the queen and Farinelli are all constrained by what society has demanded that they give. And you can look at, it's so easy, isn't it, even in our time, to look at celebrities and talent and leaders and think they have it all. Their life must be so easy. They have adulation, they have money, but we see over and over and over again, historically and in our time, that the more that society demands of people, the more it breaks them down. And the more that they try to stand up to it and pretend like everything is okay, sometimes the more that actually hastens an unhealthy psychological state and eventual breakdowns.
Where is Farinelli psychologically?
He is in that state where he has he's just gone along in his life to fulfill on the demands that have been made of him. He has never dared to stand up and assert his own will on the world and do anything because it was his desire to do it. He is running along the track that was cut for him by those that brought him up, and then the crowds that adored him. And it wasn't until he went to Spain that he found even any real ability to make decisions for himself and decide what he wanted for his own life.
In reality, maybe Carmen can speak to this, in the real life of Carlos Farinelli, he had some physical problems because never having gone through puberty, his growth plates never fused. So he was elongated in, strange ways, and he had joint problems, and his lower jaw was reportedly underdeveloped. So it kind of tucked in. But Carmen's research shows that he was a very desirable social partner among married women in high circles.
Definitely. Castrati were very popular. Through the sensuality of their voices made women faint. It's the nearest equivalent I can think of is the reaction of the Beatles' female audiences. But in addition, they were incredibly popular with our aristocratic ladies who would usually have been married off to much older men when they were young girls. And they got sex without problem, without danger. It was safe sex, and they were considered to be wonderful lovers.
Come to Southwest Shakespeare Company. You never know what you're missing. All right, in the last few minutes that remain, I'd like to open it up to you. You can ask questions of each other or of the audience, and say the things that you didn't have a chance to say. Do you have something, Deborah Ann?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it is really exciting to when I first came to rehearsal and I heard Brandon Gray and his voice and speech technique and his accents that he was trying to portray for himself, and then also help the other cast members to bring forward. Those are really beautiful and really well done. I love Ben Tyler's Cockney. I love Gustavo's when he comes in and he's playing Jethro. Not only is his accent cute and very different from who he is, but he seems to be having the most fun of everyone in the entire show. Watching Gustavo just run around the stage is really, really, really beautiful in the scenes. He doesn't have much to say when he's at the palace, but it's interesting watching him just as he's listening to pull in all of the gossip that's going on. And I'm wondering for myself and the audience, is he going back and telling the king what everyone's doing and saying? It's just, that's very exciting and very interesting. And La Quadra, played by beautiful Doc,
Jim Coates.
Is he's trying so hard to get this king committed. Feels like he wants to take over or something, but he doesn't have enough power. But he's really beautiful to watch. And the costumes. Oh my God. I got to shut up now. But those costumes.
Macy Holzer, shout out.
Those costumes.
Gravity defying hair.
Amazing.
Beautiful, just
Very
beautiful.
talented.
The costumes,
Wonderful.
the makeup, the hair is just really beautiful. Put that together with the music and the professional actors on the stage. I'm really excited every time I see Farinelli. Thank you guys. I really appreciate you.
Thank
It's
you.
a beautiful show. Do you need to give shout outs to the people who are helping you behind the scenes?
Yeah, shout outs to everyone backstage, Dylan, MJ, Emmy, anyone. If I'm missing anyone, Haley, who keeps
Haley
Larson.
Yeah, Haley. Anyone that I'm forgetting, please, you can punch them later. But they're all wonderful, and we would not be able to do this fantastic production without their assistance.
I left one thing out that I'm seeing.
And Stacey, of course.
Stacey mentioned.
Colin's projections and whoever made those frames that go around the projections, you guys are bad mamma jammas.
and our lighting designer, Brett, of course, as well.
It's really beautiful.
Absolutely.
It's really,
Yeah.
Lighting, sound, everything.
And the whole production, the production team headed by Stacey Walsh, director of productions. She was the eminence grise behind it all, and she's done a fantastic job.
absolutely.
So, Carmen, you were thrilled with the video projections, were you not?
Colin Carter, yes, he was. He's a wonderful designer. We had lots of meetings where I told him, "Now can you please Google this particular picture? I would like to have that for this scene, and I would like to have something else." And so I used real paintings of the period for this, and Colin manipulated them for me if they needed manipulating. And then also, of course, it was very important to get the thing that was so important to the king, a forest with a hole cut into it. So he went through a lot of trouble finding recordings where you actually feel you're standing in a clearing in the wood, and you look up into the sky, which was what the king demanded. And the other thing was he produced the Goya birds for me. And then one other interesting thing, which was which is a surprise for those who haven't seen it yet, but there is also a big instance where we enter Farinelli's head and share his childhood trauma. And I'm not going to tell you what it is. You must come and see it and hear it.
I hope you will all come and see the play. I just held up a code. I don't know if you can freeze the frame and get that, but that is the program. If you would like to read up more, or you can go to our website, which is
swshakespeare.org,
and learn more about all the cast and creatives and our beautiful director and musicians online. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. It's a joyful, happy play. It does deal with the trials of being a human being and a rock star and a monarch. But I think if you come to see it, you'll leave singing a tune. It's a great show.
And I just want to do another shout out to the maestro and the musicians that play.
Absolutely.
They are just amazing. And even if the actors didn't take the stage, you would still have an incredible evening of entertainment listening to these beautiful musicians.
Absolutely.
Well put, Bo.
Indeed.
Anyone else? Final remarks? Is there any chance we can play the slideshow again?
Absolutely. I can make that happen.
Let's play it out. And thank you, everyone. We'll see you at the theater. Come to Farinelli and The Tempest at Mesa
Yes,
Art
indeed.
Center.
Farinelli and the Tempest. It's a new show.
Farinelli and the Tempest.
Fusion.
Yes.
Come and see Farinelli and the King and in Rep with the Tempest.